So I'm Anise, I'm a coach, and I work with people who are recovering from burnout or wanting to prevent and avoid burnout. And by burnout, I mean being in a state of physical and emotional exhaustion. I often get my clients out walking. Obviously, there's times during burnout where we can't go out walking, but it's such a great way of moving stress, changing how we're thinking, and feeling a bit better, feeling a bit more resourced as well. We're going to talk a bit about burnout and the founder experience specifically, but I thought we'd talk about this model from the resilience of dynamic first. Let me find the model. So this is who I trained with, and resilience is what we need really to avoid going into a state of burnout, and it's resilience, we can think of it as our capacity to deal with all that life throws at us. And it's really our ability to adapt in the face of change, particularly by having energy and taking care of our well-being and then being able to adapt to deal with things. So hopefully you can see this model. And if you look at the three circles, break down, break even, and break through, are they visible? All good? Yep. So if you think of breakdown as that situation of burnout, that is where we do not have the energy we need to function and survive. Could be physical, could be emotional, but that's where things are really not working. We've completely run out of energy. Then further up, we've got that idea of break even, and that's where the level of energy you have meets the level of energy that you need. Most of us are here. This is what we're experiencing most of the time. And the bottom end of that is coping. That's where you're getting through the days, but if anything else came up, it would just tip us over the edge and it'd be too much to deal with. And the higher end of that is bounce back. So that's where we're doing well, we're making stuff happen, go on holiday, tonsillitis, passed out, or you're spending the weekend going, ugh. So you're sort of having peaks and troughs of energy. And moving all the way up to the top, you've got that idea of breakthrough. So this is this glorious world where you have more energy than you actually need. Your well-being is topped up. You're able to sort of adapt and assess situations and respond to them as you go. So it's quite a useful way of thinking about what's going on for us and being aware that it's moving all the time. It's going up and down. It's not something that just stays the same, and it's just being affected by what's happening for us. You could also apply it to your business. You could apply it to a country and sort of have a sense of resilience, how people are doing. So how do we move up? At all levels here, it works to spend a bit of time being present and really managing our energy. So that's obviously things like resting, playing, socializing, going for a walk. And once you reach that break even, then you can start doing other things, a bit more into a land of coaching really, and really start thinking about your behavior, your mindset, your boundaries, pacing, your sense of mission, those sorts of things, and working more to not only keep your energy high, but to be able to adapt and manage it differently. There's a few major blockers that come up for all of us. Overestimating our capacity, so that's trying to do more than we actually can, trying to do it all ourselves, not asking for help, and not really having clear boundaries. So if we think about founders in particular, there's loads of statistics out there, and there's lots of sort of conflicting ideas of what burnout actually is. But I think we could say around a third of founders have experienced burnout, and most founders have experienced high stress. So let me get rid of that, and we'll just quickly go through some themes before we have a bit more of a chat. Where are we?
I had burnout, Anise, and it's not fun.
Yeah.
Try to do too much. I notice it in others as well. I'm working with a founder at the moment, and he's had it. And I'm sort of, although I'm not qualified, like yourself, I've lived through the experience, so I'm helping him through a tough time and trying to. He takes on too much, like you say, and I think he does tend to try to do everything because he thinks he's the best at person, although he's got a very competent, capable team around him. He won't relinquish any duties because he feels he's the best one to do it. It's taking a lot of work, but I'm there by experience. So I recognise a lot, and it's an important, very, very important area. Very important area.
Yeah, so much of what you're saying is so common, and especially for founders, it's often our origin story. This is why we became founders often, because work situations burnt us out. That
That's
we
right.
had redundancy, illness. But I think something that happens is when you have a burnout situation, when you hit the wall, which it sounds like you've been there, you cannot function and you often need to get out. So you get out of the job, you get out of the situation, out of the relationship, out of the country, whatever it is, and you can start to heal and recover. But the problem is you haven't necessarily made those shifts in how you're thinking about things, how you're doing stuff. So the risk of burnout, once you've gone through that initial "woo, I'm free," it can become quite high later. And so I think we're quite susceptible to it as founders because of that as well. Does that sound familiar too?
Absolutely, yeah. Repeating the same mistakes, and that's what I'm trying to help him with at the moment. So
It's
yeah,
so difficult because a lot of what you're talking about there are things that we are doing because that got us success previously, that doing it ourselves, not stopping, and not sort of taking time to slow down and talk to other people. That's how we got to where we're at, and it's so ingrained. And that's why recovering from burnout, first of all, you're knackered, so you're at a really low ebb anyway. But secondly, you've got to shift and change how you do things, and it can just become quite frightening to do things in a different way because you don't trust it, you're not sure, you think things might just all fall down around your ears. So you're just in a very difficult situation there.
absolutely, yeah. It's a tough one to crack. In this particular instance, I think the issue is the way people are socialized and brought up, and expectations around that, and trying to break a lot of them, that thinking, that thinking of, I'm founder, I've got to behave in this way. I'm the main talent here. A lot of it's to do with ego as well, and the law of diminishing returns.
So may I ask what helped?
It becomes like a drug.
Yes.
Mm.
Yeah, that's very true. Well, it's celebrated, isn't it? Overworking becomes quite heroic. It's a sort of it's one of the only addictions that people go, "Wow, you worked all night, you made amazing things happen." You're sort of there is a bit of a dopamine rush as well once we tick things off and do things. So it is very you're praised for it right from school, from getting 100% in your test and keeping going, and it sort of comes from that. But may I ask what helped you come through burnout? How did
Um, I at the time I had a lot of support, help, professional help. And weirdly, I it was all about trying to find some time for me. So what I did is every day, without fail, every day, and this is not going to work for everyone. I switch off by smoking a Cuban cigar. Um, Now, my doctor had mixed feelings about this because obviously there's some negative health connotations, particularly if you smoke them incorrectly. But what I can say from that, I will sit down for an hour and a half, know full well that time's mine, and I have some of my most productive ideas, thoughts, whatever, reflective thoughts when I'm doing that. I'm not rushing around like a busy fool like I used to. And just having that time to sit there and do that, it's wonderful. Some people I know are really getting into things like mushrooms and all manner of things, um, and meditation. There's all manner of things, but that's what helps me, because I know that I can sit down with a decent cigar, listen to a good podcast, a politics podcast or business podcast, some music or whatever, and that really, really helps.
But what you're actually doing there, of course, the switching off, the having that time, the recognizing that you need to slow down, slow your mind there. But what you're doing is breathing exercises there. Basically, that's breath work, isn't it?
Yeah, so I've got the doctor, the mind doctor, saying things like, "Yeah, this is back in the day. This is when it happened. Yeah, let's do this. This is brilliant." And then the GP going, pulling his hair out, because smoking, believe it or not, is bad for your health. So it was a different. They were coming at it from different angles, different professions, but that was quite funny. And I remember the mind guy saying, "I just love it when I see you reading a book, smoking a cigar."
I remember I gave up smoking 15 years ago or something. And that was one of the worst things, is that I didn't take breaks afterwards. So I'd go and stand with the smokers. So at least, at least I was having a break, and that sort of deep breathing and taking a space. So for you, it's a cigar, but that's
Yeah, it's a
what works.
massive different things. Cigarettes and cigars are a completely different thing. Cigar is like pleasure. Cigarette becomes like almost like a duty, a habit, sort of, and you can't wait to finish it. You can see people, and it's over in what, 10 minutes. It doesn't induce contemplation for me.
Yeah. But I think you've got to find those moments and things that raise your own energy. But I think then when it gets a bit harder, it is sort of changing that mindset, changing that attitude, like you were saying about some of the ego and doing it yourself. And I think that's some of the harder stuff to work on that does make the long-term difference.
And part of that was working. We used to work. I mean, one period in the business, during the building part, we was working 7 days a week, sometimes 18 hours a day, and it was painful. And we thought that everything that we produced, our output, was as a result of our efforts. And then we had a very clever guy come in, and tell us, no, you build a brilliant team, and we did. And it was all about working smarter, not harder. That's what we learned from that. And delegation. And this is what I'm trying to instill in this other founder, that he's got some superstars around him, and he can take that time off. He can go off on a Friday or a Thursday afternoon and do what he wants to do, enjoy himself with no guilt, because people have got his back. That's important.
Is he doing it?
Yeah, but only when I turn up.
He needs the sort of accountability, the permission to make it happen.
Yeah, I have to say, like, we're meeting there at 10, and he will then be there. But sometimes I can feel cold feet, and I've got to do this. Have you got people around you who can do a better job than you on that? Face it. It's that's the hard thing to break.
I think that's another. I mean, there's obviously a lot going on there for your that you're supporting, but there's I suppose this happens with everybody with work to a certain extent, but there's something specific for a founder where your business is so personal. It is an extension of you, and it's such a big part of your own identity, and so making it survive and keeping it going becomes like this huge focus. And of course, there's very little boundaries or things to stop you. If you can work 18 hours a day, you will. Like if, like you're saying, you're setting up your business, HR isn't coming and telling you off for doing this. You can do it, and you will do it, and you keep going. But the other thing that happens is your identity shrinks down quite a bit then. So you're losing perspective. but it also means that if something happens in the business, you're hugely affected by it, because it's almost like, if you think of it as standing on a sort of a big table rather than sort of standing on one toe. So if you're kind of balancing on just business, if something happens with business and that's your main thing, you're crushed by it. You just feel
Yeah.
awful. And if something wonderful happens, again, it's you, it's all you are. But if you've also got family, friends, a hobby, an hour and a half of Cuban cigar, you know, whatever it might be, then you've got all these other things that you're standing on so that you can withstand it so much more. But it sounds like something that's happening there for your peer is the sort of, how do they let go of that and
Yeah,
still
but
themselves?
they also become the bottleneck in their business, like against future growth. You're not going to grow the business. It's if he's got to touch everything that he's got to touch it and take ownership of it. And also, you're never going to sell that business, because if it's that business is too dependent on that one person, and it's not going to operate, it's going to fall over once that person walks out. Normally the owner, that business is not going to be attractive to acquisition, and people potentially are going to buy it. So there's a lot there that he's wrestling with and coming to terms with.
There's so many of these things, it's easy-ish for us to say these things and we know them, and so much of burnout and these sorts of things is not rocket science, it is stuff that we know, but actually doing it is really, really hard and really challenging and really quite a massive shift in who you are. And the not doing things ourselves, we know it, and it sounds like he knows it logically, he knows it in terms of his timetable and what's actually possible. It sounds like he's recruited great people as well who can do it and did care about that, but actually doing it and letting it go is quite frightening, isn't it?
Absolutely, absolutely.
But it's really good that you're there, you're supporting him through it, and it's also really important communities like these as well, because these are examples of other people doing it in a different way. We often work in the ways that we see other people working, and that becomes our meter of success as well. So
Yeah,
sort of seeing so many other examples shows us how, oh, you can do it this way, or this also worked, or there is something else. And like you were saying of the working smarter, that's always the case, isn't it? The people who work more are not necessarily the ones who get to thrive and succeed and be recognized. They're often the workhorse ones who get to do all of the stuff.
yeah, absolutely. It's about working smart, getting results, and being productive, and getting that down to a fine tee. There's always better ways of doing stuff. But going back, these groups are really useful for that, because we've had a lot of mindfulness talks and stuff, and it really is. And I speak to so many founders, and I come off from meeting them, and I think, oh, they're showing signs there, different things that they may need, help with, and stuff like that. You can sense it, particularly with me knowing the signs and seeing it firsthand.
Yeah, there's a stage, I don't know if you noticed in the model, there's also a bubble between break even and breakdown called fragmentation. And
Yeah,
that is that stage that I think you're recognizing as well. But the trouble is, we don't necessarily recognize that we're going through it at the time. And it's often other people going, she's not right, or he's not okay. But we don't know it, because when you're in it, you're getting into a sort of tunnel vision and you're very affected. And I think this is the thing about stress that is less recognized as well. When you are stressed, you are affecting everybody around you, everybody you work with, everybody you live with, everybody you're dealing with on the phone. And that's also why coaching or getting help or whatever is so effective, because stuff that helps you actually has this knock-on effect and this ripple effect for everybody around you. And I think we don't necessarily factor that in. And the more stressed you are, the more mistakes you'll make, the harder it will be, the longer it will take, the more you'll upset somebody, and then you've got to be dealing with papering over all of that argument afterwards. And so it just sort of, once you get into that situation, it becomes exponentially difficult. But it can also be difficult to have that conversation with the person who can't see it, because their stress reaction is to do more themselves, keep going. And so there does have to be that sort of shift. And that's the trouble for all of us, is the attitude, if you spend any time in social media, is always, how do I do more? How do I be more productive? How do I earn more money? And sometimes it's got to be, how do I have enough? How do I recognize that this is just enough? Or how do I do less today? How do I do the minimum? And it's just a whole shift in how we're thinking about things.
Very wise words, Anise. Thank you for joining us this morning. Any questions for Anise this morning, guys? Thanks for joining us. Neil?
Nothing springing to mind. I mean, yeah, I'm always kind of aware that the value that balancing the things that you do is important. So yeah, always good to hear how different people are tackling that, and walking in the countryside is always good. I always look forward to going and staying with my in-laws in the Highlands of Scotland and getting lost in the Highlands on a bike. That's kind of something I have moments to reflect on when this little desk area gets a little bit crowded. But yeah, so yeah, yeah, good that you're sharing this and doing what you're doing.
Oh,
apologies, I did join a bit late, so I missed Anise's presentation. So apologies for that. But yeah, we work extensively with startups as a venture studio. And one of the topics that is highlighted in our studio is founders' resilience. I think we're all individuals. I work with a lot of founders from different backgrounds, and I think it's very important to know your limits. And I remember starting the venture studio, and the idea was, you know what, we need to provide holistic support, right? And what we mean by that is, look, we're not going to be good at everything. Building a startup is difficult. and often it's the case that, you know, you embark on this journey and then you start to realize how difficult it is, and then, you know, you try and take on a bit more than you can, or you have the capacity to, because, you know, you haven't quite identified those boundaries of your limitation. And then we start to get the real burnout. And I think it's just important for founders to really have the support where they need, the expert support, which is what we do in our studio. You know, you can't be the best at marketing as well as the best at sales, as well as the best at operations, as well as the best at financial modeling. You just can't, you know. And I think it's really all about how we can improve the ecosystem to really have that hands-on support that founders need. You know, we kind of been evangelizing this, you know, within conversations that we're having, but you know, it's definitely a topic that, again, sorry, I missed your presentation, but I'm sure you've covered a lot of this. But it's definitely a topic that's current and
yeah,
really needs to be addressed. It's very technical at the moment. You know you have to work on your branding and marketing. You know you have to work on go-to-market. You know you have to work on your product and things, but there's nobody really pushing the human element. Like, you know, it's going to be a lot of work. You might not be able to do it all, but here's where you can find some hands-on support to do it for you, or cover a certain aspect for you. We act very much like an incubator, whereby, you know, we're not about just preferring advice and giving you you know, coaching sessions, and then you then have to go and do it yourself. You know, we take on the responsibility of creating those assets for you and setting the strategy and things like that. And I think we need more of that I don't know, would that be something people on the forum agree with?
Yeah, you've raised so many points there. I think it's so true. It's really hard. It's really hard doing this and being a founder, and people do need support and they do need to get that help and get that backup. I thought I'd leave you with a sort of practical advice. So obviously we've talked about the things that give us energy and just help us get through the day, slowing down, Cuban cigars, cycling, whatever it might be. But if you think about the to-do list, I think that's a big issue, something quite practical that people can do, especially if you are trying to do more than you physically can. You can only do 1 day's of work. You can only do 1 day's work in 1 day, and we keep trying to do far more. So just sort of having a look at your to-do list and thinking, is my to-do list running me, or am I doing my to-do list? And then going through what you have and asking yourself, do I have to do this myself? Do I have to do it today? And does it have to be done like this? So we're just sort of questioning everything that we're doing and really thinking about, where do you actually have to push, and what's the absolute important, urgent thing that you have to push? What's the minimum? What's the stuff that you can just get done or get outsourced? And then what's the stuff you can let go and not do at all? So that might be delegating or to somebody else, or maybe it doesn't even need to be be done at all. Then it's just part of your own stress reaction, like, oh, I have to do it like this. So I'll leave you with those thoughts, and maybe that will be some help. And thank you so much.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much for helping us with this. It's a very, very important area and topic. Isolation is also a big issue with many founders I speak to, and that's something that we're working on with our regular walks around Hyde Park, founder walks. That really helps. It's good. And you're going to get a lot of love and big ups and respect on LinkedIn over the next few days, and it's because this has been a very, very important chat today. All right.
Wonderful. Thank you so much for having me. Lovely to meet you, and take care of your energy today.